So, what's up people and welcome to the Mission 117 discussion of Spy Family. So Mission 117 came out a while back, and as always I will leave a link to this mission that's currently being shown on the publisher's official website, Manga Plus, for free to the North American audience. So if you're interested, we'll go take a look at it before they pull this mission back. Now, if you recall, a couple of weeks ago, we were looking forward to the continuation of the battle between Hemlock and Yor. And as much as I enjoyed the short mission 17 that came out, which gave a very heartwarming introduction to Matthew, it was really nice to come back to the battle once more in this particular mission. And so Mission 117 starts off where Mission 116 left off. If you remember, Hemlock started attacking Yor for whatever reason, and he seemed to be pretty upset over Yor becoming somewhat civilized to society. And 117 starts off where Yor is kind of apologizing to Hemlock and telling him to stop. She's saying she won't get in his way. But that, of course, isn't the issue. And he continues to attack. And what the Midoran elk still nearby going crazy? She was in a very dangerous position because she could be attacked by either party. And of course, of the two, Hemlock is far more dangerous than this elk. And so from the beginning of the chapter, we already get a feeling that we know that this is going to go into a major battle as we all hoped. But what we didn't expect is that there was going to be a big reveal, probably one of the biggest reveals in this chapter with regards to this particular arc, which I'll talk about later. Now, of course, in reply to Yor's apology of getting in his way, Hemlock answers, it's not that you're in the way, it's that your existence is in the way. You just being around is in the way of not only him, but also of Garden. And he starts talking about what he means when he starts saying that Yor has changed and her influence is starting to affect Garden. To the point that even Gimpy is now starting to talk about getting a boyfriend. Yes, a boyfriend. If you recall in the last chapter, or chapter 116, Gimpy turned out to be a girl. But in any case, Hemlock is starting to blame all of this on Yor. And of course, the discussions that she had with Matthew with regards to welcome home kisses and all of that seem to help prove that his worry is real. And of course, Yor is saying, no, that's just there to help improve my identity. And Hemlock counters by saying, identities and true selves, by doing what you're doing, well, none of that belongs in Garden. We're not supposed to be agents, we are assassins. We are the blades of Garden to prune the ugly brush that may overrun society. And as such, we have no part in our lives to have love or happiness. And Yor, finally realizing that Hemlock is not going to back down, starts finally fighting him and telling him to calm down. But Hemlock says that he is calm, and the person who's not being themselves is Yor. And Yor, of course, while fighting, still is holding back. And Hemlock, noticing this, goes into his full attack, where he actually does a really cool move by attaching the hook of the cane blade to the hook that's on the scabbard, thereby extending his reach. And by doing so, he could attack from really far away and nearly kills Yor by slitting her in the throat. Luckily, of course, Yor's reflexes were fast enough that she was able to somewhat get away, but not without getting injured, though not to the point of being critical. And Hemlock starts continuing on that the Thorn Princess is no longer useful if she no longer has any thorns to her. And while that's happening, we start getting a view of his thoughts, and you realize that he actually admired Yor in the past because he thought they were both the same. They were cold-hearted, ruthless killers, and the Thorn Princess was the best of the best, even better than him, and because of that, he admired her. And of course, with that, he wanted her to be the rival to which he could look up to and live up to. But as he noticed that she was becoming more domesticated, Hemlock realized that she was becoming soft. And with that, his admiration turned to disgust when he realized that her life was becoming a joke to his own goals. And because she has become softer, Hemlock feels that there is absolutely no way she can defeat him anymore, and he comes out and tells her that. And while he's attacking her mercilessly, he starts talking about how she got domesticated, and that now she was... yeah, at this point, I think Hemlock is becoming the garden version of Nightfall. You know, each one of these organizations has their fanatic, right? The secret police has Yuri, the Wise organization has Nightfall, and of course Garden has Hemlock. She's complaining about how she's now making merry with the first lady and now making out with her husband, and that is basically what's destroying her. And of course yours like, I am not making merry with my friends or making out with my husband. And Hemlock comes back and goes, it doesn't matter, you're socializing, and by doing so you are losing your edge. You have to remain alone, for that is the only way you could stay sharp. But because you have become like that, Hemlock no longer respects her and realizes that he has become the strongest. But in the meantime, Tatsuya Endo always does these weird quirks, right, when he writes this comic. And so while he's believing that he has become the strongest, Tatsuya Endo actually gives the bottom line, which is that the man has just become lonely. And it's a self-inflicted loneliness. And so you see this stupid scene where you see Hemlock purposely going out of his way to become lonely. And of all things, he's talking about eating alone, which is okay, but visiting the amusement park alone. And you're starting to wonder, okay, Tatsuya Endo, I understand what you're doing. The training alone is one thing, but yeah, of all the things you put in an amusement park ride, right? And we realize that because he didn't even visit his barber, that is the reason why he has long hair. Now, if you recall, I mentioned in the beginning that this chapter had probably the biggest reveal in this particular arc, and that is that Hemlock is a man. Yes, we find out because Tatsuya Endo wrote it that way, finally, in this chapter. Now, if you recall, one of the biggest debates that was going on since this particular arc began is whether Hemlock is a man or a woman. And because he had that look similar to how Fiona looks, many people argued that this character must be a woman. But finally, we find out that he is actually a long-haired man. And the ridiculous nature to why he has long hair has finally been explained. Thank you for the wonderful reveal. It's always good to get such a great lore dump in these chapters. And in fact, this is such a ridiculous argument that even the elk decides to walk away, right? But regardless of how ridiculous the argument is, his strength is real. It's no joke. And he is starting to put tremendous amount of pressure on Yor, not only with his blade work, but also because of his throwing knives, he is starting to actually injure Yor. But part of it is because Yor is still holding back, right? I mean, Hemlock is a member of Garden, and she doesn't want to go full out on him. And by doing so, we start getting this idea, okay, I think I know where this is going. And I think many of the readers also knew, and I got a feeling if you read this chapter, you probably know too, is that Hemlock finally goes, you know, this is getting ridiculous. It's not even worth killing you anymore because you're not even a worthy target. I don't even want to fight you anymore. But to show how useless you are, I am going to go and destroy your family. And of course, that is the absolute worst thing that you could tell Yor, right? Ever since Spy Family started, the best thing to do to make Yor motivated was to threaten her family. And in this situation, it doesn't change. And from this point, we start seeing some incredibly powerful fighting from Yor, including a midair kick of a rock that slams Hemlock right in the forehead. And you start seeing some really cool pictures here. When Hemlock finally throws another blade at Yor catches it in her mouth and immediately fires it back at Hemlock, who immediately kicks it away. These guys are phenomenally skilled, and Hemlock continues to put pressure on Yor, but Yor's not taking it anymore. And you see this fabulous move. You see that because Hemlock was a bladesman, and since he's using that special weapon, he had the advantage of reach compared to Yor. But if you've ever seen any martial arts comics or stories where they pit a warrior with great reach, such as with a spear, against somebody with limited reach, the way to defeat that is to go underneath their attack, and once they close the gap, then that reach becomes not only ineffective, but works against that warrior because their blade is so far away. And Yor takes it even further by ensuring that Hemlock cannot attack by passing Hemlock's blade through the ring of her spike so that Hemlock can no longer use that blade, and using the other spike, she immediately strikes with one of the most devastating attacks that you have seen in this comic so far. Or so we think, because this is Yor, and Yor understands that this is still a partner in Garden, and because as angry as she is, because she still has control, she stops the spike prior to hitting Hemlock. What we saw was just the image of what Hemlock thought happened to him, and that was enough to take Hemlock down. Not physically, but psychologically. Because Hemlock, of course, thought that he had become stronger, and that strength came from the ideology of all that sacrifice he has done to keep himself alone. And we see this again, ridiculous images of Hemlock going out of his way to be alone, almost to the point of him being in tears that he is so lonely. But that isolation has given him power. And if this was any other cultivation sort of manga or manhwa, such as solo leveling of others, where they bring themselves into isolation for meditation, you see that for typical genre shonen mangas, that is a successful way of powering up. But this is Spy Family, so we realize, and Hemlock realizes that, against Yor, it just didn't work. Now, Yor is completely oblivious to all of this, and she is completely focused back on the mission again. And when she sees that Matthew's bird has come to signal that he has found the enemy's base, she tells Hemlock that they need to go, but Hemlock, now being completely psychologically broken down, can no longer walk. And so we see the end of this chapter where Yor is dragging Hemlock through the mission, and you see Matthew's bird pecking on Hemlock just to insult him even more. And so, I thought that Hemlock was going to be a greater threat throughout the entire series, and maybe he will become like that because he is starting to become like this rival character to Yor, right? But with this chapter, we're starting to understand that he is going to become a comical rival character rather than a serious run. Rather than being like Blackbeard for One Piece to Luffy, he is more like Speed of Sound Sonic to Saitama in One Punch Man. And if this keeps on going, and if Speed of Sound Sonic is the reference point, then we probably expect even funnier situations in the future. And so we're starting to see how Tatsuya Endo is starting to treat fanatics, whether you see it in Yuri, Fiona, or Yor. And what we find out is that to these fanatics, their biggest enemy are the forgers, whether it's Anya, Lloyd, or Yor. And so, we have yet another comic character now, this time in Garden, which is very interesting because up till now, Garden has been a seriously, almost menacing sort of group. And getting to see a comical character in there will be interesting. And so we'll have to see what happens in chapter 118. I figure that they're going to continue on with this mission. And it'll be interesting to see how Hemlock recovers from all of this. I don't think they'll stop it right at this point, But they may not make too much more of a story with this, considering how not too powerful the enemy is, and most likely this arc was open just to introduce other characters such as Hemlock, more than focusing on the enemy. But you can never tell, and Tatsuya Endo has surprised us in the future, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens in chapter 118. And once that comes out, I'll bring out another video. I hope you join me at that time. But this is the discussion for chapter 117. If you've read it, what do you think about it? Any comments will be greatly appreciated. And until the next chapter, happy manga reading, and as always, Jaya, nice day everyone.